Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, we're going to be talking about Tampa Bay Buccaneers who have the most to prove in this upcoming 2024 preseason. Now, this can also, go over into the regular season as well, just the entirety of the 2024 season, but I did want to focus on preseason today because this is the first chance we are going to get to see these players as they only have 3 games this year. It's not much time to make an impact. You have a game against the Bengals, then you have a game against the Jaguars, and then you have a game against the Miami Dolphins. So, again, not a ton of time for these guys to make an impact. And look, there's a lot of different ways these guys have reasons to prove themselves, right? It can be for long-term reasons, it can be for just making the roster and somewhere in between, right? So let's go ahead and get started. Firstly, at the quarterback position, I want to talk about Kyle Trask. I feel like this is a pretty important preseason for Trask, right? Because if everything goes well with Baker Mayfield and knock on wood, he doesn't get hurt or anything, this could very well be the last couple of games we see Kyle Trask in a Buccaneers uniform. His contract is up after this season is over, and will he stay with the Bucs? Will he go off to get another opportunity with another team? We don't know, but Kyle Trask, a former second-round pick at the very end of the second round, has been a backup his entire career so far up to this point. His young career at that. He still is only 26 years old. And really, this has been the only time we've been able to see Trask and what he can do. He obviously wasn't in the conversation to start whenever Tom Brady was around. Baker Mayfield came in last year, had a quarterback battle with Kyle Trask, and Mayfield won. So Trask was yet again put as a backup on this team. So I'm curious to see how the former second round pick does here in these preseason games, just for not just the purpose of what his future could hold with the Bucs. Do they want to keep him as a backup? Would Trask even be interested as staying with the Bucs as a backup, or would he want to go off to try his hand in free agency and see what other teams may be willing to give him an opportunity? I feel like a lot of that may shake out here in preseason. If Trask looks really good, maybe he will consider going off to another team. If Trask doesn't look that great, well, maybe it means that the Buccaneers would be having a higher chance of keeping him, or it means the Buccaneers may just move on entirely after this upcoming season and maybe looking for a new backup quarterback somewhere down the line. A couple of other guys here on the offensive side of things. Sha Tucker, I've talked about him in a few different videos. I think he's got a lot to prove, as last year he did have some opportunities with the Bucs, and not a lot happened, unfortunately. And there can be a lot of factors that go into that, such as offensive line play and scheming and all these different types of things. But Tucker now finds himself battling for a roster spot. And I've said it before, I said it in the Players to Watch video, but there's still some supporters in the Bucs fan base for Sha Tucker. So we'll see if he can rebound from admittedly a pretty disappointing season last year. And if he can, kind of get back on track and showcase what he can do. In the wide receiver position, there's a couple of guys. I think that Sterling Shepard is an interesting name that can be on there. Can he be essentially like a strong veteran presence for the back half of this Bucs wide receiver room? I would still like to think that he's probably going to make this roster, but how much of a role is he going to have in the regular season? Because so far, it seems like he is far and away from cutting into the snaps of Jalen McMillan and Trey Palmer. So you want to see Shepard go out there just and have a good preseason, just so you can feel more confident about the back half of your wide receiver room in case guys do have to step in. Of course, I can also say a very similar thing for Trey Palmer as well. Right now, Jalen McMillan has been crushing it in training camp so far. If this continues, Palmer very well could see him out of a starting job. So he needs to go out there, still continue to build momentum for himself in preseason, in these preseason games, to try and continue to battle for a starting opportunity going forward. So we're just going to have to wait and see how that gets along. Also, at the tight end position, I've got to mention Keith. This is another guy who has been very one-dimensional throughout his time so far in the NFL. He's coming into his 3rd year in the league, same with Cade Otton, and their contracts are running up soon. And I think Keith needs to show more than just being a pure blocker, because You have so many different types of tight ends now on this roster. K. Otton's kind of your all-around type of guy. Payne Durham is kind of your big-bodied red zone type of guy. And you have Devin Kolb, who's definitely more of your more athletic, vertical, stretch the field type of tight end. And if the Bucs do carry 4 tight ends, is it really worth keeping O'Keefe around? That's going to be an important question to answer. O'Keefe needs to showcase his value. I've seen some comments lately asking about O'Keefe, but we haven't seen a ton from him so far. I think that you want to see Keefe's game grow and evolve and not so much be one-dimensional, but showcase that you can offer more. Because yes, while there is some value in being one-dimensional in terms of like if you do one thing very, very well, it can be valuable to a certain extent, but it seems like that extent is running out more and more as the Buccaneers continue to invest at the tight end position. So we will just have to wait and see how that gets along. A couple of other players finally mentioned on the offensive side of things. I'm going to be curious to see what happens at the backup guard position. I was taking a look at a depth chart from ESPN, and right now it has Lorenz Metz as the team's backup left guard behind Ben Bredeson. A big guy for a guard at 6'9", 310 pounds. If that's the case, Lorenz Metz has a lot to prove this preseason because he's going to be the primary backup behind Ben Bredeson. Originally, it was going to be Sua Opeta. A lot of people felt pretty good about that backup situation going forward. Now you bring in a guy who, again, big as a tree, strong as an ox, basically, but we need to see good play to have more confidence in the backup offensive line. You've got some established guys back there, like Justin School, like Brandon Walton, like a couple of other names back there as well, but how's Lorenz Metz going to factor into that backup left guard spot? I'm going to be curious to see how that is, at least according to ESPN's depth chart going forward. On the defensive side of things, arguably, one of the biggest names on the entirety of the Bucs in terms of something to prove this preseason is Logan Hall. Now, I don't know how much Logan Hall is going to be playing this upcoming preseason, but I hope it's a lot. I hope that we see good things from Hall because so far, up to this point, entering his 3rd season in the NFL, folks, I'm going to be honest, there hasn't been a ton to say like this guy can be a long-term answer at the defensive line for the Bucs. And that's and look, I like Logan Hall. I think he's a great guy. I've had him on the channel before, but in year number 1, 2.5 sacks, 6 quarterback hits, 5 tackles for loss, not starting any games. Then he's your full-time starter in 2023, started 13 games. You had him at half a sack, 1 quarterback hit, and 2 tackles for loss. Every number besides just total and solo tackles dropped. Now, he did have 2 passes defended, which was good. And according to Pro Football Reference, he actually had a higher value to the Bucs in 2023 than in 2022. But we need to see more here in terms of statistics. We need to see continued growth because for lack of a way of better putting it, like Will Golston was brought back, and was he brought back for a reason? I think that he could be a potential starting option there. He was a longtime starter for the Bucs for many, many years, has started 88 games for the Bucs throughout the entirety of his career. Now, was he brought back just to be depth, or was he brought back to be an insurance starting option if Logan Hall isn't working out in year number 3? Golston started 1 game last year in 2023, 9 games in 2022. The Bucs did also bring back Greg Gaines as well. Is he another guy who could maybe get some opportunities going forward if we don't see Hall continue to showcase improvement? Gaines started 2 games last year for the Bucs and put up a sack, put up 5 quarterback hits, and showcased some overall good ability as a defensive lineman on this team. So I'm going to be curious to see how much Logan Hall plays in the preseason, and whether or not the effectiveness of how much Greg Gaines and maybe Will Golston putting pressure for that starting job will lead to Logan Hall maybe having a little bit better of a preseason going forward, because it will also give us a bit of a glimpse into how he may be in the regular season as well. Taking a look at the linebacker room, there's a few guys, right? KJ Britt, first and foremost, comes to mind. He's a guy right now that has to come in and be the second linebacker to Lavonte David. That alone is not an easy situation to be in. The last time the Buccaneers were looking for a guy like that, they spent the 5th overall pick on Devin White. And it ended up Devin White left for the Philadelphia Eagles, and now KJ Britt's in the situation that he's in. He's also in a contract year, by the way, and if things go very well, you could see KJ Britt being a long-term answer for the Bucs at the linebacker position. Because Lavonte David isn't getting any younger. This may very well be his last year in the NFL. And KJ Britt has been setting the attitude, setting the tempo for the defense in training camp so far. Has he gotten into a couple of scuffles? Yes, whether you like it, whether you don't like it, that's subjective. But the point is that I think players respond to that type of leadership. I think it helps light a fire under fellow teammates and fellow players, and can certainly help with just overall increasing the intensity of practice, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. So KJ Britt's going to have a pretty big preseason here. I think that he may very well get a good amount of playing. Well, I don't know if he'll get a good amount of playing time, but when he does, we need to see good things in that limited capacity, because he very well is going to possibly be the long-term starter, at least for this season, if not possibly longer if things go well. If things don't go well, you very well could see the Bucs resetting at that linebacker position with maybe SirVocea Dennis in that mix, as well as some maybe new additions next offseason if the Bucs potentially lose Lavonte David to maybe a retirement and potentially have to move on from KJ Britt as well to find some different options. So it's going to be very, very intriguing to see. A couple of more players worth mentioning. Zyon McCollum's in that mix as well. How is he going to look as the number 2 cornerback? That's a huge, huge question that is penciled in as Zyon McCollum right now, but we don't ultimately know what is going to happen until it happens. Zyon McCollum going into year number 3, it's a lot of pressure, right? And everything on paper, everything that we've heard, everything that we've seen written down has said that McCollum has looked good, has the confidence of the Buccaneers coaching staff, and things are going to work out well. But we don't know that until these games happen, right? That's why this preseason is going to be very important, getting McCollum starting reps. Now, thankfully, he did start 9 games last year for the Bucs. That's a huge, huge benefit to McCollum, even more so than what Britt or Hall has had in the past. Not so much Hall, but more so Britt. But being a number 2 cornerback on a week-to-week basis, the expectation, that's a different type of ballpark, right? For a full season. And that's the expectation right now. So we're going to have to see McCollum. Hopefully we do see good things and he can showcase that he belongs as that number 2 corner and can be a strong member of this Buccaneers secondary going forward. Couple more names worth mentioning. You do have some guys like Josh Hayes, who's battling for a roster spot. Tavierre Thomas, Christian Izien, and Tyke Smith all have a lot to prove because they are all 3 battling for one position, and that is the starting nickel cornerback on this team. In my opinion, Tavierre Thomas has the lead right now. We haven't seen really any of Tyke Smith, be it, I don't know if he's dealing with some nagging injuries. I think I saw it reported somewhere that he has been dealing with a minor nagging injury or what, but Tavierre Thomas has looked pretty good. Haven't heard much of Christian Izien, who was the team's starting nickel cornerback all of last year, and we haven't heard anything from Tyke Smith either. So both those young players have a lot to prove this preseason as well, because I imagine they're going to be getting a good amount of reps with Tavierre Thomas, all 3 of those guys playing cornerback, and it's still a battle in my opinion. And one of these guys is going to be the starting nickel cornerback going forward, maybe for the full season. Maybe somebody eventually gets benched and somebody else gets put in, but you want to have a good nickel cornerback spot. The Bucs have been very fortunate to have that be a position of strength the past couple of years, Izien being a big strength for the Bucs last year, and we'll see if that continues as those 3 continue to battle and try and make the most of their opportunities. Finally, folks, I want to talk about Chase McLaughlin again because I'm going to keep on bringing it up. Yes, there's a lot to prove here for McLaughlin. He got a bit of a big contract, not an insane contract, but did get a couple-year deal, did get paid a little bit. Is he going to be able to show consistency? Is he going to be able to continue to be a strength for this Buccaneers team? I think so. I hope so. But again, we're not going to be able to know until we see consistency with the kicks. The Bucs don't have another kicker on the roster. McLaughlin's going to be kicking the entire time in preseason. You want to see him make his kicks. You want to see him continue to have consistency throughout this preseason, because if he doesn't, one, that's not great, right, for just the overall special teams ability of the Bucs, but two, you may be looking at a situation where the Buccaneers, again, may find themselves in a old, bad situation where they don't have a consistent answer at kicker like they had last year with Chase McLaughlin, like they had for a couple years before with Ryan Suckup. So we're going to have to pay attention to how that goes as well. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts and opinions about this down in the comments section below. Who else do you feel like has a lot to prove this preseason with the Bucs? Let me know your thoughts and opinions. I'd love to hear them. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope y'all enjoyed. And as always, guys, I'll see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.